Hi, how's it going, guys? I'm Gary. I go by Brewzer FPV if you're from YouTube world. I just thought I'd create a video because I see this question come up a lot, and it's how do I get into FPV? Where do I start? What do I buy? And the comment section gets filled up pretty quick with a lot of different ideas and opinions, and I think that given my situation, I have a pretty good idea of what someone needs to get started. I'm pretty new to the hobby, I'm not going to lie to you. I joined back in June of 2019, so not even a full year under my belt yet. But in that time, I've learned a lot. I've recently come into the hobby myself, so I know what the obstacles are. I know the equipment that's out currently, what's popular, what's not. So I think I'm in a pretty good position to share my opinion and help someone else get into the hobby. So in this video, we're going to discuss what equipment we need to get started. That includes everything from goggles, drone, batteries, tools, everything you'll need to get going. So this is kind of a budget entry level into the hobby, and I hope you guys find it useful. Okay, so the first thing that someone will tell you need to buy is a pair of FPV goggles because they're the most important thing when it comes to flying your FPV drone. And there is a fair argument to that, but in my opinion, the most important thing, or at least the first thing you should be looking at buying, is a radio or a transmitter, a controller, whatever you want to call it. You're going to need one of these to get started, and that's because I think the first thing you should do is look at getting on a simulator, because it gives you the chance to actually fly the drone using your controller or your transmitter on the game and really give you a feel for the sticks and if the hobby's kind of going to be right for you. So there's some controllers that I'll get into a little bit more detail about in just a moment, but I just want to clarify a few things. Whether you're left or right-handed, 99% of the people are going to be wanting to get a Mode 2 controller, and essentially that means that on the left-hand side is your throttle up and down, you have yaw, which is turning left and right, and on the right stick you have pitch forward, pitch back, and then roll left and roll right. That's going to be for most people, so no matter what transmitter you decide to go for, just look for a Mode 2 and you should be fine. Okay, so let's get into a little bit more detail about these controllers and see which one is going to be right for you.
Hi guys, just want to apologise for this section of the video. The audio is not obviously as good. Not that the audio in the first bit was really that good, but I know that this audio is obviously a lot worse. Let's just move past that. So the first radio to talk about is the FlySky radio, and this is the cheapest radio on my list. The reason that I even have it here is because I think if you're getting into the hobby and you want a radio just to practice on and play a sim with, then £33 isn't a really big investment to test it out and see if you're going to like it, because this will plug into your computer and you can use the sticks to control the drone and fly in a game. So I think for £33, and it can sometimes be found for cheaper than this as well, I think it's a really good deal. You get the option of buying a Mode 1 or a Mode 2. As I said, most of you are going to want a Mode 2 controller. And yeah, let's just have a quick look at the other pictures here. So it's not gonna win any beauty competitions. It's got a sort of plastic cheap feel to it, but it has got some metal gimbal sticks. It takes batteries, so you don't need to have any sort of special LiPo charger or anything like that to replace the battery or charge it up. You just give it some fresh AAs and away you go. But yeah, this is the cheapest option, guys, and this will work with flying a 5-inch drone as well as flying in a drone simulator. So for £33, it's an option to think about. Not the one I would definitely recommend, but if you're on a budget, then that's kind of the best you've got. Moving on. So this is the Taranis QX7, and there are different versions of this controller. I think there's like a pro version as well. And although it's just showing blue and orange for the color options here, there is a white option and a black option, and I think there's some other colors. You just have to do a little bit of looking around. This is the one I found for now anyway. This one is an interesting controller because this uses the D16 and D8 mode module. So from my understanding, that means that it will pair nicely with tiny whoops. So these tiny whoops are little small quads that are sort of they run like 2-inch propellers or maybe even smaller actually, but they typically don't. They use a mode called D8 mode, and some of these other transmitters can have some hard times connected to it. I'm not a complete expert, so I might be saying some of that information wrong, but I do know that this controller in particular does bind with tiny whoops and the larger quads as well. So if that's something that you want with little hassle to have to set up or buying extra modules and things like that, then this is going to be a great choice. £85. I think I got mine for about 80. Again, they do fluctuate up and down. If you can buy a second-hand one, I've seen those go for as little as £50. And yeah, it's got a lot of potential, this controller. You can replace the gimbals. I personally don't mind the gimbals in these. I think they feel pretty good, but just knowing that there is an upgrade option down the road if you choose to do that is nice to know. There's plenty of different switch modifications you can do this. You can add little colored caps to the metal switches and things like that. Mine has a double A battery tray at the back, so I can plug in 6 AA batteries, but you can also use a LiPo battery if you get that variant. So there's like a little port on the back where you can either insert the battery tray or put a battery. So it's kind of up to you and down to your preference. What else to say about this? Yeah, it's got great range. I really can't fault it. The only thing is it is quite a large controller. So if you're looking for something a bit more portable, then this is not going to be the one for you. But I would say it's the most popular one, and if you're getting into the hobby and you want support, I can pretty much guarantee that there's going to be someone able to answer your question when it comes to this controller, because it's super popular, and for good reason. It's a great controller. Okay, so let's move on. This is the... Oh, I didn't have the tab up, excuse me. This is the third option. This is the Jumper T16, and yeah, this is kind of the new kid on the block. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's not as expensive as, say, the Taranis X9D Plus, and certainly the new Tango 2 Pro that just came out is more expensive too. This one pairs with anything. It has it's open source. My understanding of this isn't the best because I don't own this, but just from the bits I've seen of it, I understand it's open source and will work with. So yeah, this will work with anything except for I can't pronounce this one, so I'm just going to put the name here. So yeah, it doesn't pair with that. So just that's the only thing you need to consider with this one. The sticks, I believe these are Hall sensor gimbals, and it's supposed to be a really nice controller. So you've got a nice big colored screen here, which takes up quite a large portion of the controller. But I think for the money, you do get a pretty good deal, and it's very future-proof. So yeah, that's my third choice. As I said, there are other controllers to pick from, but if you're on a budget, this is kind of where you want to be looking. I hope that's helped, guys. So let's go ahead and move on to the next section.
Okay, so you've picked your controller, and now the next thing is to look at a simulator to purchase. There's a couple of different simulators to buy, and I do recommend you actually do spend money and buy one. I think there are a couple of free ones out there, but if you really are going to be looking to get into the hobby, even if you are going to fly physical drones, you're still going to want to have a simulator for just practicing tricks, or if it's cold outside, you want to just keep your muscle memory on your fingers, then you're going to need a good sim. And really, I would say there's probably about 3, possibly 4 that you should look at. First one is the one that I use, and that's Liftoff. Liftoff is a really great simulator just because there's lots of different maps, different types of quads you can fly. There's a lot of people that play it, and I just really enjoy it. Another one is Velocidrone, and again, I've not actually played this one, but I hear a lot of good things about it as well, so that's another one you can consider. There's also the DRL simulator, which is a very popular one. Again, I've not tried it, but just from my research, I found that a lot of people are pretty happy with it, and I believe that you can even qualify for the DRL championship just from playing on there. So that really says a lot about what they think of their game and how much that sort of skill can sort of transition into flying a real drone. Um, and I think that's about it. I think there's another one called DCL game, which is still kind of in beta, and that's another one to consider. I think it's free on the beta right now, so that might be one actually just to give a little try out to. But yeah, we're not going to get into too much depth with simulators because there's really just the ones I mentioned, and you're going to have to make the decision of which one's going to be best for you. Okay, so now we're on to one of the most exciting parts of the hobby, and that is buying your first set of FPV goggles. I chose the SkyZone O2C goggles because of the reviews at the time were really good for this, and the price fit my budget. So this is what I went for. But when you're choosing a goggle, it is important to get a decent one, and I would spend a little bit of extra money buying a decent pair of goggles than say buying a cheap one and not being happy with it, and it's kind of taking away from the enjoyment of the hobby. So definitely look at spending probably one of the biggest parts of your budget on a pair of goggles. A couple of ones that I can recommend are, well, I'll show you. Here we go.
Okay, so the first goggle I can recommend is the Eachine EV800D. This is a diversity goggle with a 5-inch display, 800 by 480 actually, and it includes DVR, which allows you to record your flights. It also includes these two antennas, so you've got like a patch antenna and some sort of like pagoda style antenna. So a patch antenna, the one on the right, this one will pick up signal what's directly in front of you or whichever way the patch is pointing, and the circle polarized antenna here, or pagoda style antenna, this one does more of a sort of 360 coverage, whereas the top and bottom are kind of dead zones. So having both of those style kind of gives you the best coverage for wherever you're going to fly. Now, this is a box style goggle, so it is a lot larger, the form factor, and if you wear glasses, this is probably what you're going to want, unless you get some custom diopters, excuse me, to go into your smaller form factor goggles. But I hear a lot of good things about these. I've never personally used them myself, but I know just from conversations with people that everyone really likes these goggles, and for the price, £69, it's a pretty good deal, and I think for most people they'll be pretty happy with these. If you've got a little bit more money to spend, then my recommendation is to get the SkyZone O2Cs, not to be confused with the O2X, which is pretty much the exact same, except for it has a camera built into it, so you can press a button and while you're wearing the goggles you can see what's in front of you. But this is kind of a gimmick and not really something that you're going to want to use. So save yourself the extra £40 and just get the O2C variant. This again has got diversity, which basically means that you can use two different antennas, and this one doesn't come with any antennas, but you can get some pretty decent antennas for a cheap price. The ones I use are the pagoda antenna, which is literally £2.86, so that's super cheap, and a patch antenna. I use this one, which I got for £6. So this goggle has a lot of different colors you can pick from. So you got black, white, blue, green, and then red, and then these sort of two spacey, I guess, kind of looking ones. But yeah, they've got a color for everyone, so you take your pick, which one you prefer. These goggles have got built-in DVR, and their form factor is really small, so it's nice to be able to just take it out of your bag and stick it on your head, and you know, it's not going to take up a lot of space or look ridiculous on your head. But I mean, I just can't really rave on about these goggles enough. The field of view is only 30 degrees, which is kind of small compared to some of the larger, um, more expensive goggles from Fat Shark. But I think it's perfect. It really lets you focus on what you're flying, and it doesn't overwhelm you too much. I wouldn't say that it's really a negative at all. In my opinion, I think that's the perfect spot. Um, and the screen is super bright, and the menu system to navigate around is really crisp and very responsive. And once you get used to the buttons and what they do, you'll be right at home with it. I have heard that things like Fat Shark are pretty kind of janky, so people really like the menu system on these goggles. Now, there's a lot of people out there that have an affinity for Fat Shark, so Fat Shark goggles at this price point, they're a little bit more expensive, but these ones do have OLED displays, and I have tried these goggles, and if I'm being honest, I think the screen on the Sky Zone looks better, even though it's not an OLED display. I think it's got the same field of view, but I would just say the screen brightness is not quite as bright in these goggles, so on a sunny day, it can kind of wash out the image a little bit. Still great goggles, still work perfectly fine, has diversity and DVR, all the bells and whistles you're going to need. But if I were to pick between the two, I would say go for Sky Zone, having tried both of them. This one does include, it looks like it includes a battery, so this straps on the side. With the Sky Zone goggle, you just get a barrel connect barrel cable, which you can plug a LiPo battery into and then keep it in your pocket, or you can spend a little bit of extra money and buy like a Fat Shark style goggle battery pack, excuse me, and use that as well. That's what I've done, and it works great. So there are obviously a lot of better goggles out there, and if you want the upgraded version for the Sky Zone, then there is the Sky Zone 030, which is really highly regarded within the community. It's got OLED display. Some say better than the Fat Shark HDOs. So that's that's a pretty good accolade to have. And the modules for the diversity are supposed to be really good in both of these goggles, to be honest with you. So I believe with the Fat Shark one, you do have a module bay. So if you wanted to have like a rapid fire module, then you can put that in here. But again, that's going to add extra money. So if you're on a budget, maybe the Fat Sharks aren't for you. But yeah, with the Sky Zone, it's got a built-in one, and I'm not going to list off a whole bunch of different goggles because there are a lot of them out there, and as you get more into the hobby, you might want to look to get some of the the new Fat Shark HDO2s or the Orcas, or potentially even the DJI HD goggles. So that's something else to think about. But in this video, we're talking about budget, and although 200 quid is a lot of money, if you're getting into the hobby, I would recommend these goggles for sure, or even these ones if money is tight. Okay, let's go on to the next section.
Okay, so you've got your transmitter, you've got your goggles, you've been practicing and playing on the sim, and you've been having a great time, but now it's time to go and get your first quad. Now, there are a few different ways to do this. One is to build it yourself, and that is a really good idea. If you have skills to solder and deal with electrical components and you're confident with that, then go ahead and do that, because that is going to give you the best experience in terms of knowing how the drone functions and how to repair it when it breaks. So I highly recommend doing that. But if you're like me and you just want to get out and fly straight away, then buying a pre-built is actually not as bad as someone will tell you. And yes, you will have to learn how to repair it, because you will 100% crash it and break something, and then it's down to you to go ahead and try and troubleshoot it and figure it out and repair it. So don't come into the hobby if you're thinking that that's not going to happen. 100% it's going to happen, it's just a matter of when. So I started off on, this is from eSheen, and it's the Wizard X220 high voltage. This runs from 4S to 6S. Maybe I should explain what 4S and 6S are. So it's just the cells. So a LiPo battery with 4 cells is referred to as a 4S, and one with 6 cells, which is higher voltage, is called 6S. So this runs 4, 5, and 6S, and it was a pre-built that I bought, and it got me into the hobby. And you know what? I've broken this thing a dozen times, but it's easy to repair and it still works. And I can definitely recommend buying a pre-built quad. I wouldn't necessarily say to get this one in particular because there are better ones out now. My recommendation would probably be the iFlight Nazgul 5, and they do a 4S and a 6S version, and that's going to get you in the air having a really good time, and you'll probably be pretty hard pushed to build a better quad for that budget. And I'll talk about a few other pre-built quads, so let's just jump to that now.
Okay, so starting off with the first drone here, we have the Emax Tiny Hawk S. Now, this is what we would consider like a tiny whoop. This is something that you're probably going to want to fly indoors mainly. It does fly with a 1S or a 2S battery. So a 1S battery is probably more for indoors, and if you do decide to take it outside, and as long as there's not a lot of wind, you probably want to fly that with the 2S battery. This gives it a little bit more power and a little bit more speed, and yeah, just that's what you're going to need for going outdoors. But this particular quad is one I'd recommend because, for one, I own it and I think it's absolutely brilliant, but it's so robust, and if you're a new pilot, then this is something that's not going to break on you. There are a lot of other tiny whoops out there, but they are a little bit more fragile and don't hold up in crashes as well. And this one just has really great flight characteristics. It's about the size of the palm of your hand, so it's not very big at all. And it includes a let's see if it shows here. Yeah, so it shows everything it comes with. It actually comes with a carry case as well, so all of this goes in there. But you'll get a 1S battery, a 2S battery, the actual quad, spare props, a charger which you plug into like a USB port, some extra screws, a little screwdriver, some stickers, and a manual. So pretty much everything you need is right here to get yourself flying in FPV. So if you've already got your, let's say you've got a Taranis QX7, you've got your goggles, and then all you need to do is purchase this, and away you go. You know, this comes with everything you need to get flying. It will bind with I believe it binds with D8 mode on a Taranis. If you're using a different controller, then you may need to buy a receiver and connect it up. So this is probably something that would be better suited to a the Jumper T16 or the QX7. But yeah, it's a great quad, and I would definitely recommend it. But if you're going to be doing a lot more flying outdoors, but you're still not sure if you're ready for a large 5-inch quad and the sort of risks that inherently brings with it, then this is your step up. This is the Emax Tiny Hawk Freestyle, and this is again a 1 and 2S capable quad. This one actually uses a special connector. Let's see if there's a picture. Yeah, so a special connector. So you actually plug two 1S batteries into it, which then makes it it provides it then with 2S power. So that's interesting. But yeah, this has got open prop guards. Sorry, it doesn't have prop guards. It's open prop, so you get a little bit better flight characteristics. It's got a carbon frame, so it's going to be pretty rigid. And yeah, you'll get a lot more speed out of this, and the motors obviously are larger. I believe, yeah, the other one, this one here, obviously I didn't mention, but the props are actually covered, so you know you can bump into things inside your house and not do any damage. But yeah, this is something I've not flown, but I have watched a lot of reviews. It's something I've been tempted to buy, and everyone seems to be very impressed with this, and I can see why. So it's a really cool quad. You know, it's a 2.5-inch quad, but it has characteristics of like a 5-inch when you're flying around. So it's something that I think for a beginner is a great quad to get. The price as well, £81. It's pretty cheap. So I know, there's your entry. Obviously, this won't be able to carry like a HD camera, so you have, you just be able to record your DVR from your goggles, which might be enough for you. But if you do want to step up and start taking some HD footage, then we need to go up to like a 5-inch quad. So I mentioned earlier about the iFlight Nazgul 5. Um, Again, it comes in a 4S or a 6S version. I've got the 4S version here on the screen, but the 6S is identical, except for the motors are slightly different to sort of accommodate for that extra power. But yeah, this is a very highly regarded quad. This is one they say is probably you'd be hard pushed to build one cheaper than this. The £160 includes the receiver, which is an RXSR receiver, which is a fantastic receiver. It gives you plenty of range and telemetry. You can go for the older XM Plus receiver, which does bring the price down, but only by about £6. So um, you know, it's not a great deal. You're losing telemetry. That's kind of up to you if you want that or not. Personally, I don't think you need it, um, but yeah, that's kind of up to you. It won't let you purchase it without a receiver. I think it's because it's a bind and fly. Um, but yeah, this quad will carry a GoPro, and it's got lots of spare parts available, so if you do crash it, then you can buy new parts very easily for it. The Zing motors that this thing uses are really highly regarded as some very excellent budget motors, and you see people with a lot of these motors on just like custom quads they've built. But yeah, this is what I would recommend. Other quads, this is the quad I use. This is the Wizard X220 HV. This is the 6S quad. A little bit cheaper in price, but it again is a little bit older and has had a few issues with some sort of like flips of death, which I think they fixed out. Mine did it a little bit, but there is a YouTube video there that tells you how to fix that issue. So it's not like a deal breaker. If you buy this, just be aware that there's going to be some settings you have to change in the software, which is very simple to do. You just got to plug the quad in and connect it up to Betaflight and change a few things, and away you go. But yeah, it's a good quad. But I would probably recommend you get the iFlight Nazgul. It's a nice looking quad. Okay, so there's my recommendations for quads. Let's move on.
Okay, so now we've got pretty much everything we need to get started, but we need something to power the quad. We need some batteries and we need a charger. In terms of batteries, for a 5-inch quad, you're probably going to want anywhere from a 4S to a 6S battery, and depending on what voltage your quad supports, I would say 4S is the most popular, with 6S becoming more and more popular each day. The difference between a 4S and a 6S battery is, well, a 6S battery for one is more expensive, but it also minimizes the battery sag. So when you're throttling with a 4S battery, if you're doing it quite a lot, your battery will sort of lose a little bit of power, and they say it sags. And a 6S battery really kind of eliminates that. If you push it a lot, it will sag, but for the most part, you've got the power there when you need it. Now, in terms of battery size, for a 5-inch quad, you're looking at between 1,000 milliwatt hour battery to maybe an 1,800 milliwatt hour battery. If you go any bit bigger than that, like say a 2,200, then it's a bit too heavy for the quad, and it will probably fly, but in time that extra weight will make the motors work harder, and it will just cause you issues down the road with having to buy some new ESCs or motors once they crap out on you. So from 1000 to 1800 is kind of the sweet spot for a 5-inch drone. So the next thing you want to look out for is the battery C rating, and the C rating basically gives you an idea of how much potential energy that the battery can sort of give out in a burst. So the higher the C rating, the better. So I found that if you're flying a 5-inch drone, you're probably going to want a battery that has over 65C, and for the most part, batteries do have more than that. Like usually, most of my batteries have like about 100C. You can get the ones that go up to 120, but sometimes the battery brands aren't always upfront and honest about the actual C rating, so it's best to go with a well-known brand, because then you kind of have a little bit more confidence in that battery. And so just keep an eye out on the C rating, because you will find that the lower the C rating of the battery, the cheaper they are, so don't get caught out trying to buy a cheap battery. Keep an eye out for that. There's a bunch of different chargers out there, and I'm going to just talk about a few budget ones, so let's get into those now.
Okay, so I'm going to try not to spend too much time on this. I understand the video is getting quite long, but let me start off by showing you the charger that I use. This is the IMAX B6, and this will charge batteries from 1S to 6S, and it comes with a bunch of different sort of cables and connectors. You can basically use this battery charger to charge your batteries, to balance charge your batteries, so that basically means that it keeps the cells all around the same level. So sometimes a cell might discharge a bit faster than the others. This kind of brings them all in line, which is what you want your charger to do. You can also put your batteries into storage, so by either charging or discharging the voltage of the battery down to 3.8 volts per cell, which is what you want to do if you're not going to be flying for a few days or for a much longer period. You definitely want to put your batteries into storage mode. So this is £17. This includes the power supply. So basically, let me show you some different angles here. So here we go. So the top image is showing, this is where you plug in the mains power supply, which is included, and then on the other side you'll plug in so that red and black socket there will plug into a connector that lets you plug an XT60 into, and then depending on what cell your battery, you can plug in here. So they've got a balance cable for each size battery. And did I say it does 1S? I don't think it does charge 1S. Let me just quickly check. So yeah, this does only do from 2S to 6S, so apologies for the mistake there. So if you do have like tiny whoops that run 1S batteries, you'll need a different charger for that. But this is the cheapest option that I can recommend for LiPos. Now there are some other options, so let's just move on to that now. So I'm going to show you these next two kind of at the same time. This is the ISDT Q6 Pro Bat Go. This is an interesting power supply because it actually lets you use a different battery to charge your smaller batteries. So if you had, say, a 10,000 milliamp hour battery and you wanted to charge a couple of 4S packs, you can do that. You just plug it in on one side and it will charge the batteries that you plug into it, which is really, really cool. The only downside to this is it is obviously a little bit more expensive, and it does not include the power supply. So whereas the IMAX B6 included the power brick, this one is just kind of more of a portable charger that if you want to use at home as your main charger, you need to buy a power brick. So that's going to bump the price up. And I'll show you the power brick in just a moment, but there is another charger I wanted to show you as well. That is kind of the same case. This is the Toolkit RC and UAV M600. This is a very similar charger. It's a bit cheaper, but I've heard pretty good things about it. It can do all the things that the other ones could do, such as charging, discharging, putting into storage, all that good stuff. And it's quite a small charger, as you can see. This can charge batteries out in the field with a larger battery just like the other one, but again this one is lacking the power supply brick. So I'm just going to show you the power brick. It's like an extra £15, so you can see it's got the XT60 connector that will plug into the side and give you your mains power. So that's just something to consider. You know, it is an extra £15 on top of the £17. You know, it's, if you're looking for a budget, then maybe this charger is kind of going to be the winner here. And one last thing to sort of show you guys is you may want to pick up an XT60 parallel charging board. Now what this does is this plugs in to the charger, any one of the chargers I've just shown you, and this will then let you charge multiple batteries at once. So as long as the batteries are all around the same voltage, then you can parallel charge them all in one go, and all these chargers support that. So it's definitely something you're going to want to pick up, and you just make sure that, you know, if you're going to do this, just do your research and like do a little bit of learning before you do it, because there are a few sort of exceptions, and you know, you need to have the right voltage, you need to make sure you're using the right sort of size batteries. So you know, this isn't a tutorial on how to do that, it's just showing you that this is something that you're probably going to want to pick up, otherwise you'll be charging one battery at a time, which is not fun, because it does take about sort of 40 minutes to an hour to charge a battery, depending on the size and how quickly you charge it. I do recommend you always charge your batteries in balanced charge and do not do a fast charge. It's just going to damage your batteries long term. So that's enough about batteries and chargers. I hope you found that useful, guys.
Oh, here's a bonus tip. This is a really useful item that I use all the time. This is a voltage checker. They cost like £2, and you just plug it into the battery's balance cable and it tells you what the voltage is. It's super handy for finding out which battery you've just flown, and you put it into the bag, you mixed it up with all the other batteries that look the same. This will tell you which one has juice and which one doesn't, so super handy. Definitely have one in your kit. Alright guys, well if you made it this far into the video, then thanks very much for spending all that time with me. I know it was a long one, but there's a lot of stuff to cover and go over. I really didn't get into too much detail on a lot of things because I'm not an expert. Like I said, I'm pretty new to the hobby. I've just done my research. So if you want to find out anything else about any of the products that I brought up, then go ahead and just check out some reviews first from some more established pilots or review members in the community, because you're going to get a lot more information from them. This is just a kind of higher level overview of kind of everything that you need in the hobby. So yeah, thanks very much for your time. If you guys have any questions, then please feel free to just drop me a message and I'll do my best to get back to you. You know, the great thing about this hobby is that although it's not easy to get into, it's not very accessible, is that once you're in, it's a brilliant hobby. The community is great and everyone's always really willing to help out and you know, give you their advice and help troubleshoot problems. So don't be afraid to ask for help. That's one of my biggest pieces of advice. That's it from me, guys. Thanks very much for your time, and hopefully see you guys in the next video. Peace.